wolves to me are probably the most interesting animal in the wild. But real wolves, like wolves in northwest area of the United States, they operate together always as these packs. But the moment that people start getting killed by wolves in America, people are going to get furious.
From a pack of wolves ready to wipe out humankind to one that looks like it walked out of a nightmare, here's the largest wolf pack ever recorded, and you won't believe they're real. 1. Killer wolves. In the small, freezing Russian town of Verkhoyansk, a real-life nightmare unfolded as a super pack of 400 wolves set its sights on livestock. Over the span of just 4 days, these ferocious hunters left 30 horses dead in their wake. The pack, a terrifying cluster of hundreds of individual wolves banding together, attacked without mercy, terrorizing the village, leading to a massive hunt to eliminate the threat. Verkhoyansk, a town with only about 1,300 residents, was no match for this overwhelming force of nature. A special task force of 24 hunter teams was quickly assembled, armed with snowmobiles and traps, to keep watch and prevent further damage. With a 210 bounty for each wolf skin, the residents began their hunt, hoping to whittle down the pack. But with the relentless animals roaming the edges of town, daylight was working totally against them. The plan? Helicopters. As soon as the days grew longer, hunters were poised to take to the skies and gun down wolves from above. This wasn't the usual sighting of a wolf pack. Groups of 6 or 7 wolves are the norm. The idea of 400 wolves on a rampage like this is the stuff of horror stories. Even animal experts couldn't explain it at first. According to Dr. Valerius Geist, a wildlife expert, the unseasonably harsh Siberian winter had wiped out much of the wolves' typical prey. With the regular diet of rabbits shrinking due to a lack of food, wolves were pushed to shift tactics. And what better, more vulnerable target than a herd of horses? Wolves, known for their strategic intelligence, are incredibly cautious when it comes to attacking large animals. Usually, they prefer easier prey that doesn't pose a deadly risk. But this time, desperation bred brutality. Once the safer food options ran out, the wolves showed they were capable of targeting even the most dangerous creatures. Horses, with their bulk and strength, were a challenge, but one that 400 wolves could take on. And they did, showing no hesitation as they ruthlessly took down the defenseless animals. The town's fight to survive wasn't just about hunting wolves. It was a battle against nature, against numbers, and against the cold. Verkhoyansk, part of the infamous Stalin's death ring due to its brutal temperatures, already had the odds stacked against it. Surviving in one of the coldest places on Earth was difficult enough, but to have 400 wolves breathing down your neck made it feel like the town was trapped in a horror film. The wolves killed 313 horses and over 16,000 reindeer in 2012 alone, and their hunger showed no bounds. They were coming for people next. So, while the people of Verkhoyansk fought to protect their homes and their livestock, the fight against 400 wolves working together can't be won. They may have backed off for now, but no one knows when they'll run out of horses and reindeer and make humans their main source of sustenance. 2. Druid Pack. The Druid Pack, one of the deadliest and most feared wolf packs in history, forged a legacy of brutality and destruction that altered the very landscape of Yellowstone. It all started in 1995, when Canadian wolves were released into the park after the native gray wolves were slaughtered in the 1920s to protect the elk population. The result was a surplus of elk, but at the cost of the park's fragile ecosystem. The elk population exploded, ravaging plants and causing chaos. The wolves were reintroduced to restore balance, but no one could have predicted the monstrous force they would become. 31 wolves were released into Yellowstone, and of those, 5 formed the most feared pack, the Druids. From the beginning, the Druids weren't content with merely surviving. They were predators in the truest sense. Their first leader was shot dead after only a year, but this was merely the beginning of their violent ascent. Leadership passed to a ruthless female wolf, known for her savage nature. She slaughtered coyotes that roamed into the pack's territory and even killed her own sister's pups, ensuring her iron grip on control. This was not just a pack, it was a reign of terror. In one of the bloodiest turns, she herself was killed in a brutal battle with the other female wolves. but her sister took over and the bloodshed continued. The pack's power grew like a storm, leaving destruction in its wake. By 2001, the druid pack swelled to 37 wolves, making them the largest pack in North America. The Lamar Valley became their hunting ground, a place where thousands of red deer, known as wapiti, gathered in the winter, an easy and valuable prey. The wolves stalked the valley, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their jaws, sharp and deadly, closed like traps on the slightest mistake. These wolves weren't just hunting. They were carnivores of a terrifying scale, able to tear apart their prey with gruesome efficiency. No animal was safe, even bison, the largest ungulates in the continent. The hunting methods were nearly perfect, and the pack feasted, always moving in perfect coordination, as if they were shadows to their prey. Their dominance over Yellowstone seemed unstoppable. They fought viciously to protect their territory, driving out any rival packs that dared to challenge them. But even the greatest forces are not eternal. By 2004, the once untouchable alpha pair, the brutal female and her older mate, were near the end of their lives. The cold truth of time and weakness caught up with them. They were no match for the younger wolves, who struck with ruthless force, and the pack slowly began to unravel. One after the other, the leaders fell in bloody struggles, their reign ending in an irreversible defeat. Finally, in 2010, the druid pack collapsed. Yet, the remnants of their terror remained. Despite their fall, the wolves' legacy lived on in Yellowstone. Their hunting killed off the elk, giving plants and trees a chance to recover. But this rebirth didn't come without a price. The very geography of the park changed, rivers and ecosystems transformed by their deadly influence. The druids may have fallen, but their legacy of terror lingered, haunting the park with the memory of what once was. 3. The silent howl. We've always heard that a pack of wolves howls loudly and sets their hunt in motion. The howl has long been used in movies, but somehow, a silent howl is a lot more terrifying. These people were observing the wolves in the Wapiti Lake Pack. They were asleep, sprawled out in the snow-covered grass, waiting for the night to pass. But then, something shifted. Alpha Wolf 1014M, with no more than a faint twitch of his head, released a silent howl. It wasn't the kind of sound you'd hear echoing through the forest. There was no loud, commanding call, no howling note splitting the air. Instead, it was more like a deep, primal communication. Quiet, almost invisible, but unmistakable to those who knew to listen. The response was instantaneous. It was as if the whole pack, still half asleep, felt his call at once. Their eyes popped open, bodies tense for a brief moment, and then they moved. Like shadows, they slipped through the forest, muscles rippling and paws silent on the earth. No growls, no noise, just perfect coordination as they found their place near their alpha. One by one, they gathered, forming a nearly impenetrable circle around Tinauzo Forostis Elm. Each wolf came from different directions, almost as if they were pulled by some unseen force. The pack flowed together, as though there was no gap between them. Just the quiet motion of creatures trained to respond, to act as one. In mere seconds, the entire group had gathered. The sheer number of them was intense. For anyone who happened to be nearby, it would have been a chilling sight. The pack could have surrounded anyone with ease, overpowering them within moments. And yet, despite their strength and the fact that they could have wiped out any potential threat, there was something deliberate in how they moved, controlled, silent, powerful. The alpha wolf had called, and without hesitation, they came. They weren't planning on hurting anyone, but they wanted to make it known that if they wanted to, they could. 4. Bison hunt. This 25-strong wolf pack in northern Canada hunts one of the most dangerous prey imaginable, bison. These wolves are no ordinary predators. They are among the largest and most powerful in the world, with each member of the pack honed for the brutal, tactical hunting they will need to perform in order to down one of the biggest land animals on the planet. The bison, though massive and formidable, have their own set of survival instincts. In the dense woods, the wolves attempt an ambush. However, the bison, alert and aware of the lurking danger, remain together and group up for safety, making it difficult for the wolves to pick one off. With the bison retreating into the open, the wolves shift to a more aggressive strategy. They begin to circle the herd, intimidating the massive creatures with their movements, trying to provoke panic and break the herd's cohesion. However, the bison are armed and not easily intimidated. With their sharp horns pointing outward, they form a solid defensive perimeter. Yet the wolves are relentless, upping the pressure and trying to herd the animals into a dangerous stampede that will potentially separate one of the weaker bison from the group. The bison's natural instinct is to stay close, but the wolves begin to focus on the rear of the herd. In a stroke of luck, a young bison becomes separated from the group. It struggles to keep up, and despite its size, it becomes vulnerable to the wolves. As the panic sets in, the pack capitalizes on the confusion. With precise coordination, the wolves bring down the young bison, marking a temporary victory. The kill provides a much-needed meal for the pack, sustaining them for a while, but it's just a brief respite. The hunt is never truly over in such a harsh, frozen landscape. For the wolves, the struggle for survival never takes a break. The chase will begin again as life in the unforgiving wilderness continues without mercy. 5. Bears versus wolves. This black bear approaches the den where the wolves have their pups, not knowing the chaos it's about to start. The father, Storm, with his older offspring close by, has been reunited with his younger wolves. It's a rare and tender moment as the pups lick at his mouth, craving the same attention they did when they were younger. But the scene changes abruptly when a black bear approaches, unnoticed by the wolves at first. The danger is immediate. While the bear might not be a serious threat to the adults, its interest in the vulnerable pups could prove deadly. The wolves, sensing the sudden shift in the air, spring into action. They realize what's happening and quickly move to intercept the bear. Each bite from Storm forces the bear to retreat, but it's clear that the bear isn't backing down easily. Working together, the wolves employ a strategy of quick, calculated pressure. As one moves from behind, others lead the charge, steadily pushing the bear away. The intensity is palpable. The bear is slowly driven back, out of the den area, and off the pups. The wolves' teamwork is flawless. With every bite and growl, they reinforce the message. The pups are off limits, and they'll defend them no matter the cost. Finally, the bear, no longer willing to fight off the coordinated effort, retreats. The wolves, satisfied with their success, hold their ground, watching the bear leave. For a moment, everything is still again. But the event shows just how quickly danger can come and go in the wild, and how a pack's unity can turn the tide when it matters most. 6. Man versus hungry wolves. Justin, an explorer, found himself in a precarious situation one day while exploring the wilderness. He was completely alone in the rugged terrain, unarmed and surrounded only by the vast expanse of nature. The stillness of the wild was interrupted by the distant howls of wolves, which seemed to be calling from a nearby mountain. Interested by what he was hearing, Justin couldn't resist the opportunity to try and interact with the animals, hoping to capture a rare moment on camera. He had heard wolf calls in the distance before, but this time, something felt different. He decided to use his whistle to respond, hoping to mimic the sounds he had heard and possibly attract the wolves closer. Within 5 minutes, Justin got more than he bargained for. From the base of the hill, wolves began to appear. At first, there was no sign of aggression or hostility, but the sheer number of wolves was enough to trigger an instinctual fear. A pack, potentially numbering in the double digits, approached cautiously. Justin, unsure of the wolves' intentions, watched them move silently through the trees and grass, their sleek bodies blending into the surroundings. They circled him from a distance, eyeing him with an almost unnerving curiosity. The wolves didn't immediately seem interested in attacking, but their presence was unmistakably dangerous. Though most people would have used this opportunity to retreat, Justin, for reasons unknown, continued calling them in with his whistle. Despite knowing the risk he was taking, the YouTuber was fascinated, wanting to see just how close he could get to these wild creatures. As the wolves moved closer, the tension became palpable. Justin was completely unarmed, with nothing to defend himself. The idea that these wolves could easily overpower him if they so wished became more and more apparent. The pack approached, their bodies low to the ground, and then they stopped. Two wolves in the front of the group stared at him with intense, calculating eyes. For what felt like an eternity, the wolves studied him, perhaps wondering if this strange figure could be prey or simply a curious anomaly. Justin held his ground, heart racing. He knew that wolves operate as a team, and that if they saw an opportunity to strike, they would do so in unison. The tension between man and predator was suffocating, but the wolves remained eerily still. It was clear to Justin that they were assessing whether to attack or retreat. Finally, the wolves made their decision. They slowly turned around and began moving back toward the rest of the pack. The moment seemed to stretch as the two wolves that had been closest to him decided to pull back rather than escalate the situation. As they retreated into the trees, Justin remained frozen in place, still processing the close call. For a few minutes, he had been surrounded by a wild pack, with no way to predict how the situation might play out. Despite his fascination with these animals, Justin knew that, in this case, the wolves' curiosity had spared him. If they'd chosen to go a different route, he wouldn't have been alive to share the video online. 7. Turkey hunter's unexpected wolf encounter. In the quiet wilderness, a solo turkey hunter ventured out armed with little more than basic hunting tools. As he sat in his spot, hidden among the trees, a sudden rustle broke the silence. The man quickly turned his attention to the sound, unsure of what it was. In a state of panic, but trying to keep himself calm, he looked through the trees, spotting movement. It was something large, white, and strange. At first, he didn't understand what it could be, but soon realized he'd come face to face with a wolf. The hunter, still unsure of its intentions, kept his distance, but he could tell the animal was curious. With the camera rolling, the hunter aimed to get a closer look. The wolf wasn't rushing toward him with aggression or hunger, but instead cautiously investigated the area. Its gaze lingered on the hunter for a moment, its body stiff and watchful, as it tried to figure out what this strange figure was doing in its territory. The hunter, nervous yet intrigued by the animal's presence, began making turkey calls in hopes of luring the wolf closer for a better view. At first, it seemed the wolf might be willing to entertain the idea. It took a few steps in the hunter's direction, its movements deliberate, testing the waters. The hunter held his breath, anxiously wondering if the wolf's approach might soon turn aggressive. The wildlife around them remained still, giving off the feeling of an intensifying standoff. 8. Scout versus potential meal. On a quiet day in the vast wilderness of British Columbia Island, two men, Dave Bezet and his friend, arrived to explore what seemed to be a peaceful, isolated spot. The natural surroundings appeared serene at first, with no immediate threats or signs of danger. It was a place untouched by modern distractions, where every step felt connected to the land. However, that tranquility would soon shatter. As they moved further into the wild, their peace was interrupted when they noticed a lone wolf descending from the dense forest. It wasn't running, nor was it sneaking. It simply walked forward, purposefully. The wolf's intent became clear as it stopped for a moment and howled loudly into the air, probably calling out to its pack. But what happened next would turn an ordinary encounter into something far more tense. The two men, who hadn't been expecting anything like this, instinctively responded. They were trying to send a message that they weren't an easy target, but they were totally unaware of how dangerous their actions could have been. This howling was going to bring the rest of the pack straight to them. The wolf didn't shy away at all. Instead, it seemed more curious and, in fact, began advancing toward them. It didn't show any fear or hesitation, showing the true boldness of this solitary animal. Unconcerned by the men's response, the wolf inched closer, its presence growing increasingly intimidating as it slowly approached the two figures standing at the shoreline. Despite the rising tension, Dave and his friend remained outwardly calm, perhaps out of a desire to maintain their position, but their hearts likely raced as the wolf continued its steady advance. It wasn't the typical behavior a person might expect from a wild predator. It didn't run or growl, nor did it retreat. Instead, the wolf seemed almost like it was engaging with them, drawn to their calls. As the moments passed and the wolf got closer, the potential danger became more apparent. Yet just as things were reaching a peak, an unexpected twist came. The wolf paused abruptly, its head swiveling as it turned its attention to the distant forest. A new sound, howls this time from its pack, reached its ears. Seemingly reassured, the lone wolf suddenly broke its gaze with the men. Without hesitation, it turned around, retracing its steps up the beach, disappearing back into the forest from where it came. For the two men, relief washed over them. They had dodged a bullet. What could have been a deadly situation, should the wolf have been with its pack, had ended without incident. As the adrenaline faded, Dave and his friend were likely left with a newfound respect for the unpredictability of nature and the risks of interacting with wild predators. Had the pack been close behind, things could have turned far more dangerous for both the men and the lone wolf alike. 9. Up close and personal. The Cranberry Bay pack of wolves, typically a rare sight in full force, provided an exceptional view when captured by a camera team in the fall during freeze-up at Voyageurs National Park. The pack, which had been just 4 wolves strong the previous winter, grew with the addition of 4 pups earlier in the spring. By fall, it seemed that at least 3, if not all 4, of the pups had survived and were traveling with the adults. In the video, the pack moves together across a remote stretch of wilderness, and it's remarkable to witness all members of the pack in one frame. Among them, the pups, who appear less certain and confident than the adults, move somewhat awkwardly, an endearing sight of the young, learning to navigate the world with their larger and more experienced family. Identifying the pups isn't always easy, but the distinct behaviors and sizes set them apart from the adults. 3 of the wolves appear to be young pups, while a 4th could be another, though the differences are subtle. The only reason we're seeing footage of this sighting is because the cameraman was actually a tripod, while the lure of the Chaw's cameraman Neverdees lives on. If this one were a person, they'd be treated as a training meal for the new adults. 10. Straight out of a nightmare. Captured under the cover of night, a massive, well-fed timber wolf, weighing in at over 200 pounds, made its presence known as it casually crossed the road. The sheer size and power of this predator were evident as it moved effortlessly across the path, seemingly unfazed by the humans nearby. With just a few more curious or careless individuals in the area, it's easy to imagine this giant could have quickly shifted the balance. The same formidable wolf has also been seen casually strolling along a cut line, captured once again on a trail cam. This time, it was clear this wolf had been out hunting. With a bone in its mouth, likely from a deer or moose, it seemed almost nonchalant about the hunt it had just completed. Looking directly into the camera, letting the person recording know how at any point they can be next. Would you take that risk to get a closer look?